is Nadine Robert Cornish, who's here sharing with us this morning, Tears in My Gumbo. And we're just very excited. The subject matter on today is one, Nadine, that's so close to my heart, because those who know me and know of me and my family know that for 15 years in this community, we have served senior citizens and their families, the caregivers. Thusly is where the name Boomers Lifestyle Network has come from. We had an adult day healthcare center, Day Haven Adult Day Healthcare, for 15 years, where we ministered and took care of hundreds of families. And so when I was Naida invited me. She told me about you and invited me to your wonderful lunch yesterday. Thank you so much. It was absolutely awesome. I met some great people there too, and so I felt like we have got to get her on before she leave town. So thank you for accepting our rapid request to be here today.
Well, thank you so much, Sinder, for having me.
Wonderful.
Yes, and my whole objective for being here in the area is to have this conversation.
Awesome,
yes.
Awesome. Very excited to have you. Tell us a little bit about Nadine. I know that you're a native of New Orleans. You
Born
shared that
and
on
raised,
yesterday.
yes.
Tell us about you, because I'm sure that there are some friends and neighbors and community that's watching on this morning, and we want to take this second to ask you to post and share, to like us, and to send this word out. If you know of any caregivers that may be watching, may be able to watch today, or you can watch us on demand at Boomers Lifestyle Network or at New Orleans Talk Network. They can always watch it on demand later. But this is a very important and substantive conversation that we're going to have this morning about caregivers. 43.5 million caregivers are unpaid in the United States.
Exactly.
And that has been so in the last 12 months. So that's just a very, sometimes they are the unforgotten. We think about the patients, we think about those who are ill, but the quality of life, I hope you agree, of the patients and of the seniors are contingent upon the caregivers.
It is why I do the work that I do throughout the country, raising awareness and educating the general public about the caregiver scenario.
Awesome.
Because typically, just as you said, they are the unsung heroes.
The unsung heroes, absolutely. And later on, we're going to talk about what I love to talk about is the circle of care.
Absolutely.
Because so many times what I found in my years of caregiving is that one mother may have 10 children, but when there's need for caregiving, there may be one child that'll be able to step up and take care of that mother. Thusly comes the burnout of caregiving. And so we're going to address that. But first, we want to talk about you, and we want to talk about your wonderful book.
Thank you so much. So, as you said, I'm a native of New Orleans, born and raised, 7th Ward, St. Bernard.
Okay.
And, my family, generations, lived here.
Okay.
And I attended McDonough 35 Senior High School. I'm a proud Ron Eagle. I attended the University of New Orleans.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have roots really, really deep here. I moved away almost 30 years ago, but my dad still lives here, and so coming back home is what I do often. We met your wonderful father on yesterday. Yes.
Yesterday. Let's talk a little bit about what happened yesterday and your why for doing that. It was absolutely wonderful. It was at a beautiful restaurant, and, just the whole program was just so inspiring. And as I looked around the room, I saw that you had seniors there, you had, boomers and beyonds there, and it was just amazing. Talk about that and the reason why you wanted to come back to your homes, your home city to put that event on.
Absolutely. So it had always been a dream of mine to be able to come back home to New Orleans, especially over the last decade of my really working intensely in this field of caregiver education and training. And after I launched the book Tears in My Gumbo last year, I knew, because of course the title of my book is Tears in My Gumbo, The Caregiver's Recipe for Resilience.
Yes.
And that speaks to my roots. Tears in My Gumbo is about the joy and the sadness in the journey, right?
Yes.
Because there's so many complex
wow.
emotions
Yes.
that come with the caregiving journey.
Yes.
And so I wanted to come back home to say, first of all, thank you. And I wanted to come home to make sure the discussion that needs to happen around caregiving, the issues, the fact that, as you mentioned, there are 44 million right now,
Yes.
but with the baby boomer population aging at a rate
Oh
of
my
10,000 per day,
Per
as
day.
you well know,
Yes, ma'am.
right? That means that our senior population is going to double
Yes.
and by 2030.
Correct.
And triple by 2050.
Yes.
And so consequently, if we don't become proactive now about having the discussion and putting plans into place, putting to plans in place as an individual and also as a community and as a
Yes.
society,
Yes.
we're going to be in deep trouble.
Deep trouble.
Yeah.
You've said a whole lot there. First of all, when you speak of the tears and joy of caregiving, you know, so many times we think about as we progress and get older, that there are tears. But I can tell you from being a personal caregiver and being a professional caregiver that there are tears and joy.
Oh, without a
and
doubt.
the
Yes.
years that you're able with your loved ones, the years that you're able to spend with them and learn from them and
Yes.
glean from them are so powerful. But then also as a professional caregiver, being able to give back to the community, you know, and thusly we grow from looking at the wisdom of the aged, and it's just an awesome opportunity.
It really is.
It's an
Yes.
opportunity to be that. But then the reality is that there is burnout.
Exactly.
There is
Yes.
burnout. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, and so what we talk about, and I'm really traveling around the country now to educate and raise awareness about that burnout factor.
Yes.
What do we do to prevent it,
Prevent it,
right?
yes.
And yesterday at our wonderful event at Antoine's Restaurant, I have to say
Antoine, oh
thank
my
you to
goodness.
Antoine's because they stepped up and they said, we will host
was
this event.
beautiful.
Yes, and it's like how many people, you know, they were willing to accommodate up to 100 people. We had half of that yesterday, and it was just a beautiful opportunity to celebrate the caregiver as well as the professionals who take care of the caregivers and make sure that we've got an infrastructure to support them.
Okay,
So that was
awesome.
that objective.
Yes.
And overall, my objective is to educate and raise awareness, to get out there and to make sure that caregivers understand their role, as important as it is, that self-care is absolutely positively non-negotiable.
Important.
Right?
It's important.
Yes,
Yes,
it
vital.
really is
Yeah.
absolutely essential. You can't take care of anybody else.
Unless you take care of yourself.
Exactly.
First.
Exactly.
You know, you said something yesterday that I so related to your operation, your writing the book and moving forward in your career of caregiving came from your need to caregive for your mother.
Yeah.
Likewise with mine. That's how I got into it because
Right.
my husband and I, we were caregivers for our mothers. And so from that experience, then I began to say, well, you know, other people need this. I began to see the need. And then my career in caregiving and in boomer care, you know, it began. How important is that to you that's where your journey kind of began?
Absolutely. My background is in public health.
Okay.
I am a health educator.
All right.
And so that was my background. So when my mother got sick, I always knew I was going to take care of my mama. That
Yes.
was I was put here to do that.
That's right.
And I was well trained and well groomed for that role. But when my mother needed to be cared for, I knew that I would do that, but I thought that the buck was going to stop there.
Oh, wow.
I really thought that I was going to move back, you know, literally get back to my own life and do what I had done previously. And that
Yes.
was working as a social marketing consultant, creating television advertisement
Wow,
campaigns. So
yeah.
I had a fun job.
Okay.
And certainly taking care of my mother took precedent over everything in my
Yes,
life.
yes.
And in that process of caring for her, I began to recognize a need. And people began to call and ask questions, and I was a little standoffish. I mean, I answered the questions, but I didn't want to give anybody the impression that, I was the source, because I didn't consider myself that. But after my mother transitioned and I realized that she had gone through so much and experienced so many different maladies, but through God's grace, even though she went through those things, she didn't physically manifest those things. And I realized that my mother was going through those things really so that I could learn and grow.
Yes.
And as a result of that, it really became very, very clear towards the end of her life that my life was going to change, and I was going to serve and support family caregivers because I knew there was a need.
Isn't that amazing? The involvement of, and how even, this is really going into a spiritual side of it all, but how the need of your mother began to open up avenues and doors for you to move into your purpose.
Exactly.
That's what happened with us. That's what happened with my husband and myself, from the need of our parents. I saw the need in the community. When I went to the community, when I went to, actually it was the state, to ask them about the need, the need was there. It was so tremendous. And then people just began to come. Like you said, they'll navigate to you. And so it may not be on a professional level. I want to tell our audience, it could just be a neighbor. It could be a friend. It could be in your church. But if you see someone or know someone who's dealing with caregiver issues, or seniors that are in need of assistance, then it is for us. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
To step up and fill in the gap. There is a gap that needs to be filled. And as we grow, as Nadine just told us, that the boomer generation, we are booming at such a rapid rate. And healthcare is really not going to be there unless we have to start now preparing for our tomorrow.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I want to say is that the way that you prepare for tomorrow is how you take care of yourself today. In your 40s, in your 50s will dictate what your quality of life is going to look like more often than not. In your 80s, 90s, because we're living so much longer now, right?
Yes.
And so taking care of yourself starts now, so that you don't have to, have a caregiver later down the road. You'll be in a position to be a caregiver, which is a far better position to be in.
To make it, yes. And the other reason why it's so important for us to take care of ourselves, because in 15 years, I can't say that enough, I've taken care of hundreds of families, and I have literally seen the caregiver pass away before the patient.
Statistically, it's 30% of caregivers who are providing 24/7 care die before the person they're caring for. Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen, and it's always astonishing and also sad, because if we don't take care of ourselves and we're gone and unable to take care of our loved one, who is left to take care of them?
Exactly.
So it's important we take care of the physical, the mental, the spiritual, the emotional, and God knows the financial.
Absolutely.
So as you say, we have to start long-term care now. We have to start those policies, looking at our finances, making sure that we're healthy. It's life.
And the health is crucial, because you can't even qualify for long-term care insurance if you're not healthy. You have to be healthy to even purchase a policy. An expensive policy more often than not.
Absolutely,
But you have to be healthy.
Wonderful. This is great information. We're getting ready to go back to break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about tears in my gumbo, and then we're going to also talk about long-term care for the boomers, who are the caregivers for our aging seniors. We'll be back in a moment. Stick with us. Awesome.
I'm Matt Peel from Movement Academy. When my grandmother was in her late 50s, she began walking for exercise. When she got into her 70s, she went to a community center and added resistance training. Now, just turning 90, the signs of dementia have finally caught up with her. But without those decades of exercise, how soon would dementia have taken control? Movement Academy has your parents and grandparents in mind when we designed our active aging system. It is a fact. Our brains and body decline as we age, but by improving the neuroplasticity of the brain combined with balance and coordination exercises, people can improve their memory and agility. No instructor or gym membership needed. Exercise in private or with friends. Take advantage of our easy-to-follow balance and memory restoration promotion for only $10.95 per month for the next 2 weeks. Go to movementacademy.net and click on Active Aging Program. Then scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up. Exercise anywhere, anytime to fall less and improve your memory. We guarantee it or cancel at any time. Remember, Movement Academy keeps you moving.
Listen up. Your customers, our listeners, could be hearing about your business right now. Yeah, right now. Don't miss out on the opportunity to advertise with NewOrleansTalkNetwork.com. Call our business department today at 504-475-4793 to hear about our great rates. NewOrleansTalkNetwork.com. We provide the people, you provide the business.
We are back at the second half. This is Nadine Cornish. Tears in my gumbo. This is an awesome. I can talk about this all day because I love seniors, I love boomers, and I love the caregiving process and how, God has put us here. And he has given us family and the responsibility that we have to make sure that not only our family is cared for, but our community. And off air, we were talking about program creation. I want you to talk about that, how what you do in your work is that you create programs to put in place so that we can address these issues that we're talking about this morning. Talk about that.
Last year when I launched the book, I also launched a campaign called Carosity. And Carosity is all about getting back to caring, getting back to caring within the family, within the community, within the church, and within our workforce, right? Because it's so necessary. I say that there are only 4 types of people in the world: those who have been a caregiver, those who are a caregiver, those who will be a caregiver, and those who will need a caregiver. Okay? And so the thing about caregiving is that it does not discriminate in any way, and it affects all of us sooner or later. And so that's why the idea of Carosity is so important, that we get back to caring. And for those of you who say, well, I never was in a community where there was caring happening. Well, let's create it. Let's create a culture of care where we are. So specifically for the churches, what we've done is created a 4-hour symposium where we come out, we educate, we raise awareness, and we help the church create a caregiving ministry within the church to support the many caregivers that are part of the congregation that oftentimes are being ignored. Okay? And so we do that, especially with the churches, because the silver tsunami is for real, the graying of America is for real, but nowhere do we see it more prevalently than within the church. And so we really help the churches create a system for supporting the caregivers that are an integral part of the church.
Of the church. Oh my goodness. And thusly goes back to what I speak of every week, marketplace. Getting outside of the walls and doing marketplace. There's so much to be done.
So much.
Preparation. I want to talk about preparation, how we ourselves can prepare, how we must prepare for our futures. Not only taking care of our seniors who are now seniors, but we who are boomers and those who are behind us, our children, how we can begin to prepare and set up systems in our own lives and in our own family and teach our children responsibility. Because as we say, as we're going into the boomer years, it's going to long-term care is going to be scarce because actually you don't have the strength of the medical system as we once had. Okay, so you
exactly.
know those numbers are fewer. The boomers are larger. So what are we going to do?
Okay.
Most of us are learning that we may need to age in place. So there's preparation there in our
Exactly.
own homes. Begin to. So I want you to. You're the authority here in developing systems. I want you to talk about that, and then also for churches and ministries and communities that are listening, I want you to get a hold to what Nadine is saying, and we're going to bring her back because we want you to go into those churches. We want you to be in the community to cause change to happen. Because from working in this community for 15 years, you would not believe the things that I have, the sad stories that are told, the things that are happening to our, with our seniors. So I want you to talk about preparation and development.
So I'm glad you brought up preparation because it's so essential. So if you're not yet, you're not a senior yet, but you realize the aging is happening around you. The first thing that you want to do, as we said earlier, self-care. Self-care is about making sure that you are taking care of yourself now, that you're healthy, that if you got high blood pressure, you're addressing that through medication, but also through diet and exercise. Those are the basic, essential things that every single one of us need to be conscious of and be about doing on a regular basis, right?
Yes.
So the self-care piece is essential. The next thing that we talk about is getting your affairs in order, making sure that if now's the time to look into long-term care insurance, that you look into it, that you identify a plan that makes sense for you, budgetarily speaking,
Right.
and based on what you believe your needs may be. Now that can be challenging, but you want to start somewhere because it's always a lot more affordable to begin to plan early as opposed to waiting later in life.
Correct.
The policy is going to cost you more. Also, your risk factors increase as you age, so you really increase the risk of not being eligible.
Correct.
Right?
That's correct.
Yes.
That's
so making sure that your affairs are in order. So looking at long-term care insurance, making sure that you have durable medical power of attorney in place, that you identify who that person might be to make decisions on your behalf if something happens and you're not in a position to do
Correct.
so.
Yes.
Right?
Awesome.
Yes.
That's great information. And how about development? Talk a little bit more about how you can help our community, our communities, our churches, programs that you're willing to, as we say, come back and set up in the churches. We need those.
So educational symposiums have been created both for the church community and businesses and organizations. So through the workforce, we conduct lunch and learn series. We do it in a full day, or we come back periodically and do it every week in some instances, and some organizations have booked us to come back every other week to do 90-minute intensives with the employee force, because educating your membership is essential. Knowledge is always power, and with that knowledge, we're able to plan. We're able to think about things and learn about things that we didn't believe actually might impact us.
Correct.
But we find that as we continue to live, life continues to happen.
Yes.
And there are things that we need to be informed about. And so being informed, putting a plan in place, and the aging in place, that's the preference for everybody.
Yes.
But you can't age in place if you don't prepare.
If you don't prepare.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And there are resources in the community that will help us once we're in the system. I believe Medicaid and, Office of Aging, they have some provisions for us. But as you said, now we are who are boomers and we're still working, and boomers have money, 70% of disposable income. Come from boomers. So we do have time to look, not just for today, but into our future to say, if I want to age in place, I need to begin to prepare my home.
Exactly.
I need to be able to put certain things in place, or monies to the side, fundings to the side, so that when I need it, then I can use it. Because one thing I found in long-term care is if you have money, somebody will take care of you. You'll be surprised where relatives will come from when you have money in the bank and when you have none.
And
you
that's
can,
important.
yeah.
You know, it's important to, that's the planning piece, right? Identify the individuals that you know. You know, we our family is a beautiful thing, but nobody knows family like we know family.
True.
And, you know, I tend to think that if this is the way you were a decade ago, you're not likely to change too much,
That
right?
don't change.
So you got to really be careful about who you identify.
Correct.
Especially in the family
Correct.
around who's going to take care of you.
True.
You want to make that decision while you don't need to make that decision.
Correct.
Where you don't need that person to take care of you.
Right.
You want to be proactive, and you want to be decisive and strategic about who it is
doesn't?
that you're going to identify.
doesn't?
And even when you identify one person, you need to identify another a second
person.
and a third person as well, because life continues to happen.
It continues to happen, and that's really very important what we're talking about right here. First of all, in healthcare, families identified as natural supports. These are natural supports. But then also realize that community is important as well. You may not have the family in place or the family that's close enough that you can identify who will be there. So there may be neighbors or friends in the community that you may want to, and that's very touchy because when the rubber meets the road, things change. However, it is just so vital that we we find that person and maintain our records when we're talking about the different legal documents that are needed. Make sure that they're updated because
Absolutely.
life happens and things
Exactly.
happen. That's very important. And speaking of family, yesterday you told a story about your mom and some of what you went through. Would you mind sharing that with us today?
Absolutely. I always say I get to keep my mom's memory alive in the work that I do. This
Yes.
is definitely a part of her legacy.
Correct.
My mother was diagnosed with a pituitary brain tumor when I had just finished college, and my mother was losing her eyesight.
Okay.
So my caregiving journey actually began here while we were still living in New Orleans, but we didn't know what was going on. For almost 3 years, my mother's eyesight went in and out. And at that time, they weren't doing MRI and CAT scans on the average individual,
Okay.
And so it took 3 years for her to have an MRI. And by that time, we had moved to California.
Wow.
And they discovered that she had a pituitary brain tumor. And so that is where my caregiving journey began. Because with the tumor were really significant risk factors around her losing her eyesight, which was a terrifying thought for her,
Yes.
as well as because of the rate that the tumor was growing. If something wasn't done, she would absolutely lose her life.
Wow.
And so we began to learn all that we needed to learn. We became an advocate for my mother, and when I say we, that was my siblings and I.
Yes.
But I was the ringleader. I had the background in public health, and so I was taking charge as far as my mother's care was concerned, as far as advocating for her and identifying the best possible care. My mother's journey spanned over 15 years. So we started off with a brain tumor, but eventually there were a myriad of other problems and conditions that she developed. High blood pressure was one, ultimately diabetes, and then she suffered a massive stroke, which she was able to actually regain her speech, some of her mobility. But those were some of the things that we dealt with on a day in and day out basis. It was
Yes.
always something
Always
going
something.
on. Yeah.
Always something going on.
Yeah. Ultimately, she succumbed to stage 4 breast cancer.
Wow.
And just as, you're ready to pull your hair out of your head because you think, how can one person
Go through
endure
so
so
much.
much, right?
Yes.
But I came to understand that my mother was going through all of those things for herself, but also for my benefit as well, so that I could
Yes.
learn what I needed to learn.
Yes.
And I would be in a position to support people every day as I do
Oh, my
as
goodness.
a caregiver, coaching consultant, and as an educator.
Oh my goodness. It's all about the work of the kingdom.
Oh, yes.
I know that you're a believer. That's awesome. And it's also amazing how we're strengthened through the journey. I've seen that. I mean, after sitting, in my center, and every day I had at least 45 to 50 seniors, and I would just look at them come and go. And, many had dementia, Alzheimer's, all type of chronic illnesses. And, and then the families, the caregivers that would come in to minister who would take care of them on a daily basis, the strength that was needed, that, was always there. So I just know that the caregivers is so important that they have this community of care. We are going to talk about, another thing I want to talk about is the circle of care while we're talking about family, because it takes a circle.
It does.
It definitely
takes a
takes
community.
it takes a community.
A village to raise a child.
Absolutely.
It takes a village to take care of the elderly. It takes a village to take care of someone who is in need of care.
Absolutely. It takes a village. And I know with my mother has 3 children. I being the oldest, my mother lived in Indianapolis, Indiana. I lost her on my birthday last year, actually. And so my sister and brother were there. However, what made the journey easy is that everyone had a position. Everyone did what they could do. I was not there locally, so I was the financial. My sister was there. She was the primary. My brother did what he did. So it was just, a really awesome, it was a great experience, even though we lost her. But the support that we had was just very, very, it strengthened us as we went through the journey. We're getting ready to go on break. But when we come back, we're going to talk some more about Tears in My Gumbo. And I'm just so excited about Nadine and how she's going to come back and work with us in our community to change the face of long-term care. We'll be back in a moment at the second half.
Has a friend or family member ever recommended a doctor to you? A doctor that's near you, takes the time to listen, and gets to know you as a person, not a rushed number on a chart. A doctor that actually helped them get well and stay that way. More and more friends and family of GenCare Senior Medical Center patients recommend us to those they know and love. Why? Because GenCare treats them like family, like a friend. And isn't that what friends and family do for each other?
My family is very important.
We have the whole family under the same roof, as we say, and the same doctor who takes care of all of us.
Because everybody is healthy, happy, and to be together,
It is awesome. It's wonderful. I tell my friends, I'm going to tell my family.
My wife is also a member, We try to stick together. We've been married for 58 years, so.
Come feel the GenCare difference. That difference is why our patients recommend us. You'll see why.
What's up, readers and shakers? It's your girl, Rhonda M. Lawson, sending you a personal invite to the Literary Lounge. Tune in to Horizons with Meet the World Image Solutions each Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time for the best in literary conversation. Each week, a different author will join us to talk to their most important readers, you. You can also call in to ask your own questions. So don't forget, each Wednesday at 7 p.m., join us in the lounge for Horizons with Meet the World Image Solutions. See you there.
Hi, I'm Linda Lewis with Lewis Armstrong Family Services here live at New Orleans Talk Network. We're here every Thursday at 11 a.m. Come join us. Thank you.
We're back at the second half with Nadine Cornish talking about Tears in My Gumbo. Awesome book talking about the caregiver's recipe for resilience. For resilience, caregiving, very important conversation. We're asking you to share, to post, to like, to let people know, to make sure we owe it to caregivers, 43.5 million caregivers out there, to let them know about this conversation, to use it as a tool. To use it as a tool to move forward in their caregiving journey. We've already identified that there's such joy in it, but there's also pain. But in and through that, we grow.
Indeed.
We're excited about the growth. I want to talk about the 5 steps. You talked about that yesterday.
Yes.
Yes, share that with us.
So it's the 5 steps of conscious caregiving, and that's a concept I developed after my own personal journey and after, about 7 years of working with family caregivers. I realized that there was this pattern. But first, let me define what conscious caregiving is.
Sure.
So I define conscious caregiving as caring on purpose, with intention, and a plan. Okay. A lot of people take on the caregiving role and there is no plan, there is no intention, and oftentimes there isn't a purpose. It's just life happened, the phone rang, and life changed as we know it, right? And so being intentional about being a caregiver is what conscious caregiving is all about. So the 5 steps are, first step is helplessness. That's when you get that phone call or you're at the doctor's office and you get a diagnosis that nobody was prepared for. And life has changed. The second step after helplessness, which you don't stay in helplessness for very long. You get about 48 hours of feeling helpless, and then you got to move forward. Yeah. And the next step that you move into is recognition. And people say, recognition? Yeah, you recognize that you don't know what you don't know. There is so much that you don't know. No matter how competent and proficient you may be in one area, when it comes to caregiving, that's a whole different world. It's a new universe for most people. Even for healthcare professionals who find themselves having to take on the role of being a personal caregiver.
That's so true.
It's a shock, right?
It's a shock.
Yeah.
It's a shock.
And so once you get past recognition and realizing there's so much that you don't know, you move into the next phase, which I call process. And you stay in process a long time. You're processing. You are putting pieces of the puzzle together. You're getting answers to some of those multitude of questions that you didn't have answers to. And you're starting to recognize that help, H-E-L-P, is a 4-letter word, but it's not a bad word. And you start to realize you got to ask for help.
Oh, my.
You have to seek help. You know, you have to be willing to look outside of yourself to get the support that you need and the support that your loved one needs.
Wow.
Right?
That's amazing.
So that's happening in that process stage. Also in process, you're coming to grips with the fact that you can't do it alone. And you're looking outside for other resources, professional agencies that support the family caregivers, home health agencies become a reality and a necessary tool for most of us, right?
Correct. Yes.
And we tap into our spiritual source, right? I always say if you don't know Jesus and you're caregiving, then let me tell you,
you'll learn about
You'll find out about him because you will be calling out, for help. Lord, help me, right?
Yes.
And you're working through. You're working through, and you move from process. And I always say that this isn't a linear process. You might be in process and find yourself at helplessness all over again.
Yes.
And then you might find yourself at recognition, where once again you don't know what you don't know.
Correct.
Because it is a cyclical process.
Yes.
From process, we move into eventually acceptance. All of a sudden, we realize that, wow, we've kind of moved into a rhythm here. And though we don't like what's going on, we have come to a peace about it. And we are accepting and we are working with the circumstances, basically with the hand that's been dealt.
Yes.
And we're making the best of that. And we're starting to find peace, and we're starting to recognize the joy in the journey.
In the journey.
Yeah.
Joy in the journey.
Yes, indeed.
That has to be your second book.
Oh, yeah.
Joy in the journey.
Actually, it's joy in my gumbo.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. How wonderful.
It's
How
the
wonderful.
In My Gumbo series.
Oh,
yes.
wow. Awesome. We can hardly wait. Yeah, what you said there about professional caregivers, being one for 15 years, again, taking care of hundreds of families. When it was my mother's turn, I was just a bumbling idiot. It was like nothing, everything went out the door, nothing applied. And you would think that I could take my experience, and I was able to take it from, people very impressed in the medical field what I knew, but it was just a whole different mindset when it comes to your own. Something else I want to address when we were talking about going a little bit back to the circle of care and the position and the roles that everyone take place. And you said this yesterday, and it struck me as being so true, that it's not for everyone. Sometimes there will be multiple siblings in a family, and we need to understand this and respect everyone where they are. Sometimes it can be out of negligence that, sister or brother or whomever will not step up, but it's not for everyone. Everyone must assume when the diagnosis is given, when there's a decline in the health, everyone must assume their role and take their role and allow everyone to do what they can do. What do you think about that?
So that's what we in that process stage, that's one of the things we come to terms with. The fact that everybody has a role. And everybody is wired differently is typically what I say. You find that as a primary caregiver, you're that person, you probably do everything. You have the capacity to do everything for whatever reasons, right? And then you find that there's another sibling who might even be older than you that just seems to not step up to the plate. They don't show up. They're not engaged. They don't ask questions. Even when you don't know, right, you can learn. And you get really consumed. Oftentimes we get consumed with the fact that somebody else isn't doing what we're doing.
What we're
right?
doing, yes.
And recognizing that we all have a different level of capacity in terms of what it is that we do. I love the example you gave of how your siblings, as the three of you all had a different role that you played. You supported your sister, who was the primary caregiver right there with your mom.
Right there.
You supported her financially. You brought your resources to the table. That is absolutely positively essential. I always say we either need your time or we need your resources. So if you're long distance, then your resources are valuable and necessary. Otherwise, we need you physically there. We need you to identify somebody that can be there in your staff. So you're paying someone to do what it is that you're not able to do.
Right? Oh, my goodness.
And then there's that person who can do the cooking. There's that person who's great at keeping the house in order.
Do the laundry.
There's the person who can deal with the financial piece of it. Everybody's got a role that they can play. And as caregivers, it's important to recognize, to honor, and to respect whatever it is that our family members and our support system can bring to the table.
So important.
It's needed.
So important. Another thing we were talking about off air is the professional caregivers. And as the primary caregivers and the family, because our client, our families, our parents or whomever, they're now aging or they're in a position where they may not be able to ask questions, logical questions. To research need to be done. Questions need to be asked. And what I found in my years of caregiving is that so many times we trust our professional caregivers. We trust our doctors. So we think what they say is law, and we don't even think we have the right a lot of times, especially seniors, to ask questions. So they need an advocate. They need someone who will go to those doctor's appointments and ask questions and get second opinions. There's nothing wrong with that. I need you to really address that. That's very important, to find social workers and other people who can lead us. And that if you have multiple doctors, I can really talk about this, I know you can tell. If you have multiple doctors, that there need to be meetings, interdisciplinary meetings where the circle of professionals come together so that we can so that we can get the very best help for our loved one. Talk about that.
So you've hit on a number of things that should happen. When you take on the role as primary caregiver, advocacy is the primary hat that you wear. And as an advocate, you are the voice for your loved one. You are the person questioning. You are the person doing the research. You are the person that really has taken full responsibility for your loved one's care. Because as our loved ones age, they do lose capacity in terms of remembering sharing all of the details and the specifics. So you're the note taker. You stay on top. You're the person when you walk into that appointment, especially when it's with a specialist and you're not familiar with the medical terminology, you're the person that asks, may I record this meeting so that I can further understand what it is that's being said, and so that I can share this with my support system, right? And you are proactive as the primary caregiver and to seeing to it that your loved one's needs are met. That doesn't mean that you know everything. That just means that you will seek out the support that you need. So those social workers that can support you, many of your healthcare plans will offer support services via a social worker, a medical social worker. So take advantage of that. Ask those questions. Be prepared to ask questions when you don't know. Don't worry about what it is that you don't know, and ask those questions.
Ask the questions.
Yes.
Very, very important. That is so true. We're getting ready to go to break, but when we come back, we want to talk about resources.
Absolutely.
We want to talk about resources. We want to talk about respite and how you can find it.
Yes.
We'll be back in a moment with Miss Nadine. Stick with us at the second half.
Tired of feeling like a number instead of a person when you go to the doctor? Well, at GenCare Senior Medical Center, we know your name. We know your family. We know you like a friend and treat you that way.
Sometimes I forget she's the doctor, and I'll say, girl, you know I had a headache so bad the other day.
I like GenCare's approach. I smile when I leave GenCare.
I'm just like going to one of my relatives' house. I can sit down and talk. I feel like family.
I really enjoy my doctor. I have a personal relationship with him, and he truly is devoted to healthcare providing rather than just make a buck.
Oh, Dr. Jones and I are experiencing a great relationship because he listens. Just because we've gotten older, it doesn't mean that we're not able to do.
At GenCare, our doctors take the time you need. We listen. We don't rush you. Isn't it time you felt the GenCare difference?
Listen up. Your customers, our listeners, could be hearing about your business right now. Yeah, right now. Don't miss out on the opportunity to advertise with NewOrleansTalkNetwork.com. Call our business department today at 504-475-4793 to hear about our great rates. NewOrleansTalkNetwork.com. We provide the people, you provide the business.
Social media family, we're back at the second half with Miss Nadine Roberts Cornish, Tears in My Gumbo. This is one of the most informative conversations I think we've had on our show. It's just so important. And as we were off air, once again, you know, the conversation continues. We were talking about resources. We're talking about long-term care facilities and the importance of family to know that they exist and how to find them and not to feel bad if you have to use them for your loved one. Talk about that.
Yes. In my personal experience, I truly worked and endeavored to be able to take care of my mother at home. It was literally the last 6 months of her life when I realized that I was becoming so exhausted and so burnt out that I needed to begin looking into options. And just as I began to look into options, she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. And her prognosis was only 6 months at that point. And I knew that I would do that last 6 months. But even with my intention, I realized that I really needed more help. and there is no crime in needing more help.
No.
Recognizing
It's important
how
to know.
important it is to get the help when you need it, to say Hail Mary,
Yes.
and to really raise your hand and say, I need more help. I can no longer provide the quality and caliber of care for
Yes.
my loved one
Yes.
that they need.
Yes.
And when a person needs 24/7 care, and many of us are dealing with dementia issues
Yes.
and dealing with Alzheimer's, and sometimes the behavior patterns become so difficult that professional care is absolutely needed. So we want you to know that it's okay to ask for help, expect help, accept help,
Yes.
and receive the help that you need. And a long-term care facility is often that viable resource for us.
Awesome. How do we find those places? We've heard horror stories.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen horror stories. But how does one find the best? What are some of the things that we're looking for when we're looking for a long-term care facility for our loved ones?
So one tool that many of my families across the country uses, because it's available in every area, is the Senior Resource Guide.
Yes.
The Senior Resource Guide will list all of the facilities. So that's a handy-dandy place, as well as the internet. But I caution you with the internet, because there's always incentives associated with that,
Okay.
right? So if you're looking at a facility on the internet, then oftentimes the sponsor of that internet site is likely being paid to
Correct.
refer you to that
To refer.
specific site.
Yes.
To that specific site.
Yes.
So you really have to do your homework. The best way to know what's going on is have a scheduled appointment, but also to go in unannounced to see what
Yes.
happens when you're not a special guest.
Correct,
Right?
yes.
And interview the people that live there. Ask people, be friendly, and just say, how long have you been living here? How do you like the facility?
Correct.
How well are you cared for? And there's always those individuals who are willing to tell you like it is.
Are there caregivers?
Exactly.
Yes,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yes.
awesome.
So that's absolutely one place to start. But it is essential that you begin, because if we're looking at the cost of long-term care, that's a very high cost.
It is.
The national average for long-term care cost is $80,000 a year.
Wow.
Okay, that's the national average, and it's only going to go up as the demand becomes greater.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
so you have to be prepared financially for that reality. A lot of people have looked to Medicaid for support, and unfortunately, with our climate being what it is and the reality being what it is, that may not be a viable resource for many people.
That's very correct. If you're veterans, Veterans Administration,
Veterans
they do
Administration.
provide for their own. I do know that firsthand. And then, once again, it goes back to community.
Yes.
That you can find the councils on aging
Exactly.
a lot of times.
So back to the VA, I do want to mention the Veterans Aid Independent Program.
Okay.
That's a viable resource and support system for caregivers who are taking care of a veteran.
Yes.
But that is also based on rankings. So based on what your loved one's ranking will determine where you fall on the waiting list for the VA.
Okay, great. Now, the councils on aging, they do have caregiver support programs.
Yes, they
where
do.
you can go, and this is an amazing program. I've seen it. I've facilitated it myself, where caregivers can come together and share their stories. There's so much strength in sharing your story.
Yes.
Sometimes you may be dealing with a loved one that's operating in a certain behavior, and you think it odd, or you may not know how to handle that, especially if the loved one is still in the home. But just sharing it in a body, with a group of people, and then someone else can say, well, yes, my mom went through that, and this is how we dealt with it. So that's why, as Nadine has said over and over again, help is so important. Actually, it's selfish of us not to ask for help.
Absolutely.
Because our loved one suffers
Yes.
when we suffer.
Yes.
And, when we bring in that community that's knowledgeable, then we're giving them all that they need. And that's the ultimate goal.
Exactly. So the support groups are definitely important. And also, because I mentioned Alzheimer's and dementia, dementia is the comorbidity that usually accompanies chronic illnesses.
Yes.
And so people may be dealing with cancer, but then they find out, wow, there's some memory issues going on. There
Yeah.
are other issues. So I wanted to be sure to mention the Alzheimer's Association Every state, every city has an Alzheimer's chapter, and they offer free services as well as a 24-hour hotline.
Mm-hmm.
So contact your local Alzheimer's Association if you are dealing with any issues relative to memory loss.
Yes.
It's a free, viable, and valuable resource that I really encourage all caregivers to take advantage of.
Wonderful. There's so much more we can talk about, but I think it all begins with your primary caregiver.
Mm-hmm.
Talking with them, sit down, talking with them, making sure that you're comfortable. You need someone who you can communicate with freely and who can give you the information that you need. Nadine, tell us, how can we contact you after the show today?
Absolutely. My number is 303-394-1963. My website is tcgcares.com. That's T as in Tom, C as in cat, G as in go, cares, CARES.com. And also my book is available on Amazon. You can also order it directly from my website, and you can get it personally autographed.
Wonderful. That's important.
And
That's
it's available on
author.
audio as well. So I know caregivers are busy. You can listen to the book.
Yes. We're so excited. We're so thankful to have you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much
for having me.
You will be back again. Hopefully, you'll be our official long-term caregiver support professional.
Yes,
expert.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for being with us today on the second half. Again, the conversation ends after the show ends. It continues after the show ends. We ask you to like, post, and share, and let people know what we talked about today so that they can be blessed and lifted through the process of caregiving. We love you so much. And as we ask you every week, what are you going to do with your second half? 50 down and 50 to go. Let's get busy. Thank you so much. We love you.
Living my life like it's golden.